I moved into my new apartment about 3 weeks ago. It was a modest place in a 1970s brick building. I wanted to escape my chaotic parents' house and find some inspiration for my graphic design work. At first, it felt perfect. The city vibrated with life during the day, but nights in my apartment could be eerily quiet. That's when things started to get strange. On my third night, I woke up suddenly to a faint tapping from the wall opposite my bed. At first, I thought it was my neighbors moving furniture. I turned over, hoping to go back to sleep, but the noise continued. It wasn't just tapping anymore, it grew into rhythmic thumps that echoed in the silence. Each night, it thumped louder, and I felt uneasy but couldn't pinpoint why. While I worked one evening, I glanced at the window and saw my neighbor. He was pacing back and forth behind his curtains. His silhouette looked restless and agitated. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling as I turned back to my screen. The noise grew wilder, almost frantic. I thought I was imagining things. As the days passed, I began to hear whispers too. They felt close, like muffled conversations right outside my door. I was on edge. Each night, it felt like the atmosphere was thickening around me. I tried to drown out the sounds with music, but they persisted, always just at the edge of my awareness. One night, lying beneath my covers, I felt a strange pressure in the air. The banging turned into something like a frantic message. My heart was racing. I got up to check the door, thinking maybe someone was playing a prank on me. I hesitated, but curiosity pushed me out of bed. I opened the door just a crack. The hallway was empty, but it felt charged, almost alive. The muffled sound swelled, but it was hard to tell where they came from. I decided to knock on my neighbor's door. My hand was shaky as I rapped softly. Time passed. No answer. Just as I turned to leave, I heard a low murmur from behind the door, definitely voices, but I couldn't understand them. I stepped back, my heart racing. What was happening in that apartment? My mind began to spin. I should have called someone, but I was frozen with fear. Then, in the chilling silence, I heard a loud thud, like something heavy had fallen. I jumped back. My breath caught in my throat. I needed to know, but before I could react, a voice whispered right behind me, "Why are you here?" I whipped around, scanning the empty hallway, panic clawing at my chest. No one was there. The voices grew louder and sharper in the silence, wrapping around me like a noose. I knew I should have left. But as I stood frozen, I couldn't help but wonder what had finally stirred in the shadows of my new home. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained. I hardly slept, and the whispers clung to my mind like a weight. I was nervous but decided I had to confront my neighbor. If he was the source of the noise, I needed answers. It felt like a bad idea the moment I stepped out of my apartment. I knocked on his door again. This time, it felt different. My hand trembled as I pounded slightly harder. I waited, trying to listen for any response, but there was only silence. Just as I was about to give up, I heard the lock slide. The door opened a crack, revealing a pair of wild eyes. "Who are you?" he asked sharply, scanning me. His hair was disheveled, and there were deep bags under his eyes. "I'm your neighbor," I replied, a little surprised at the sharpness in his voice. "I've been hearing some noises." He cut me off, glancing behind him as if someone might be there. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and anxious. "You don't want to get involved." Before I could respond, he slammed the door, leaving me standing in the hallway, more confused than ever. I felt a chill run down my spine. Get involved? With what? My own fear began to twist into something darker. All day, I avoided my apartment, seeking refuge in a nearby cafe. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to the pounding and whispers. What were they trying to say? When I returned home late that night, the building felt different. The atmosphere was thick, suffocating. I hesitated outside my door, heart racing, remembering the last time I stood there. The whispers were quiet now, as if holding their breath. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The moment the door closed, the world fell away. I stood in silence, straining to listen, and then there it was again. A soft thud, followed by a quick series of knocks. The sounds were closer, vibrating through the walls. They weren't just random noises, they seemed almost intentional. I couldn't shake the fear that they were trying to tell me something. Without thinking, I pressed my ear against the wall to discern the pattern. Thud, pause, knock, knock, pause. A message. My mind raced through possibilities. What could it mean? Still too scared to decipher, I took a step back. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging my place into near darkness. I felt my stomach drop. Then, there was that voice again, a whisper rising from the dark, "Help us." I stumbled backward, heart pounding. Just as I caught my breath, I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. Something shifted in the shadows. I turned, expecting the darkness to dissolve, but it only seemed to deepen. And then, I saw it, an outline creeping slowly towards me. My breath quickened as fear gripped me. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Whatever had been waiting in the shadows was ready to reveal itself. I backed away slowly, trying not to make sudden movements. The outline in the corner had taken a more defined shape, and dread settled over me like a heavy fog. I squinted, hoping to make sense of what I was seeing, but the shadows twisted and turned, obscuring the figure lurking just out of reach. Then, the lights returned, flickering back to life, and the figure was gone. My heart raced as I scanned the room, desperate to catch anything that would explain what had just happened. The gloom settled back in, but the silence now felt different, thicker and more oppressive. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself, taking deep breaths to calm my racing heart. I had to know if it was real. I edged toward where I'd seen the figure, my pulse thrumming in my ears. As I reached that corner of the room, I noticed something out of place, a small, dark object on the floor. I knelt down, reaching out tentatively. It was a key. Rusted and cold to the touch, it had been partially hidden beneath my couch. A chill ran through me as I thought about the neighbor's warning, "You shouldn't be here." Who had lost this key? What door did it open? I glanced back at the wall, that eerie rhythm still echoing in my mind. Should I find out where this key belonged? A shiver of anxiety shot through me, but the feeling of urgency pushed me forward. I had to know more. I put the key in my pocket and shook off the creeping dread. I couldn't let fear rule me any longer, I had to uncover the secrets hidden in our building. Maybe this key would lead to some answers about my neighbor or the mysterious noises. I decided to go back to his apartment. One way or another, I needed to confront him again. His warning lingered in my mind, but I couldn't turn back now. The whispers had entangled me too deeply, and I needed to find out what "help us" meant. As I knocked on his door, I heard footsteps shuffling inside. I held my breath, heart pounding. Would he open it? Would he be hostile again? The door creaked slowly open and there he stood, looking even more unkempt than before. "What do you want?" he snapped, eyes darting. "I found something," I blurted out, pulling out the key. "And I need to talk about the noises. Please." His expression shifted, eyes widening slightly as he stared at the key. "Where did you get that?" His voice was cold, laced with an emotion I couldn't place. "I found it in my apartment," I replied, my voice shaking. "I think it might be important." Then there was a sound behind him, a faint rustling. Instinctively, my gaze flicked past him into the darkness of his apartment. Fear crashed over me as I saw something shift just out of view. "Close the door," he hissed, stepping back, panic spreading across his face. "Wait," I started, but before I could finish, the door slammed shut. The sudden isolation felt suffocating, and I realized that whatever was lurking in the shadows was now closer than ever. I took a step back, heart racing wildly, and heard a voice, clear and urgent this time. It whispered, "Let us out." I stood there, frozen in place, my breath caught in my throat. The whisper echoed in my mind, "Let us out." I felt an inexplicable pull toward the neighbor's door, but I also felt a deep-seated impulse to run. The flicker of the hallway light threw unsettling shadows, and I could almost see shapes moving just beyond my line of sight. Suddenly, the air around me grew heavy, thick with an impending sense of danger. Could I really stay here, paralyzed by fear, while something dreadful waited just out of view? I was drawn to the key in my pocket, as if it possessed the answers I sought. Maybe it was meant for that door, the one my neighbor had just sealed off from me. Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. My heart leapt as I turned to face the sound. A woman stood at the far end of the hall, her face shrouded in shadows. She was staring intently, but there was an emptiness in her gaze that sent a wave of chills down my spine. "Help us," she mouthed, though no sound came out. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, as if she knew I would come. I could feel my pulse quicken, confusion wrestling with my instinct to flee. "Who are you?" I croaked, but my voice sounded weak even to my ears. I scanned her frantically, searching for any sign of familiarity, but she was just an apparition shrouded in darkness. "Help us," she repeated, gesturing toward my neighbor's door. The urgency in her silent plea weighed heavily on me, tugging at some unexplainable part of my being. Before I could react, she vanished down the hall as swiftly as she had appeared. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. I had to make a decision, and fast. The key in my pocket felt heavier now, a tangible weight dragging me toward the unknown. I made my choice. I sprinted back to my neighbor's door, heart pounding, and I knocked harder this time. "Please, I know you're in there. I need to know what's happening," I shouted, framing my words around the urgency that pulsed through my body. Silence fell, thick and unnerving. My throat tightened as I strained to hear any response. Then, the rustling sound returned, louder now. Fear clawed at my insides, and shadows danced menacingly at the edges of my vision. Then, the door creaked open a crack. My neighbor's eyes peered through, wide and frightened. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. "I have to know what's going on," I pushed, raising the key. "This key, it belongs here, doesn't it?" A flicker of recognition crossed his face, swiftly replaced by dread. "No. You don't understand. You can't open that door." Before I could ask him to clarify, the air shifted again, the darkness deepening. In that moment, I felt that we were no longer alone. The whisper returned, louder and more insistent, reverberating in my mind. I needed to know if whatever lay behind that door was truly what I had been sensing all along. Then everything went dark. When the darkness enveloped me, it wasn't just my vision that faded. Time felt distorted, stretching out in a way that made me feel disoriented. I stood there, immobilized, as if the very essence of fear had rooted me to the ground. Just as I began to panic, light pierced through the shadow. I found myself in an unfamiliar place dimly lit by flickering bulbs hanging from the ceiling. The walls were bare, and an unsettling familiarity settled over me. It was the inside of my neighbor's house. Not far from where I stood, a door creaked open. The same door my neighbor had just tried to keep me away from. My heart raced. Was this what lay beyond? I stepped closer, the key in my pocket suddenly feeling warm against my skin. The whispers had faded, but an ominous silence filled the air, thick and suffocating. My neighbor was nowhere in sight, which only heightened my unease. I approached the door slowly, heartbeat echoing in my ears like a drum. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the key tighter and placed it into the lock. It felt strangely magnetic, as if it was meant to be there. With a click, the door unlocked. I hesitated for a moment, fear gnawing at me. Had I made a mistake? A faint rustle came from within, and my grip on the doorknob tightened. I pushed the door open and braced myself for whatever awaited me on the other side. The room beyond was unnaturally cold. A chilling draft swept across my face as I stepped over the threshold. The walls were lined with darkness, but I could make out faint shapes. Objects were strewn about: broken furniture, shattered glass, and remnants of what looked like old photographs. I edged in, each step sounding like a hammer against the silence. Then I saw it. In the center of the room, an old mirror hung crookedly on the wall, its surface clouded with age. As I drew closer, my gaze hardened on the reflection. At first, I saw my own frightened eyes staring back, but something shifted. A flicker, a blink, and there I was not alone. The woman from the hallway appeared behind me in the mirror, her expression one of desperation. "Help us!" she mouthed again, her eyes wide with terror. Before I could fully comprehend, the glass rippled like water, and an icy wind surged through the room. I stumbled back, heart racing as the air crackled with a dark energy. The whispers roared back in force, overlapping and chaotic. They were demanding, pleading. "Get out! Run!" shouted a different voice, not the woman's. It was deeper, wrapped in urgency. Instinct kicked in, and I bolted from the room, heart pounding, as the air behind me grew thick with shadows. I barreled down the hallway, my mind racing. I needed answers but suddenly feared I had unleashed something horrible. Something that shouldn't have been awakened. When I reached the front door, it would not budge. Panic surged through me. What was happening? I turned around, ready to face whatever was behind me, but the dark thoughts began to swirl. Then I realized I was not trapped in that house. I was trapped in something much worse. So many questions slammed into me all at once. Could I escape? Or was it too late? The door felt like a solid wall, mocking my desperation. I pulled on the handle again and again, but it remained unyielding. I could hear the darkness closing in, a tide of shadows rippling against my back. I needed to find another way out. I spun around, the hairs on my neck standing up as the whispers grew louder. "Help us!" echoed in my mind, mixing with the panic. I darted toward another door I hadn't noticed before. My hands were trembling as I gripped the knob and twisted it. To my relief, this door opened easily. I stepped through and into what looked like a small kitchen. Old dishes piled in the sink were covered in a thick layer of dust, as if years of neglect had overtaken this place. The air was stale, tasting of fear and forgotten memories. "Where is she?" I whispered, feeling my heart drop. The woman's frantic eyes lingered in my thoughts. Was she trapped like me? I scanned the room for anything that might help me understand what was going on. Then I saw a notebook lying on the table, half open and yellowed with age. I rushed over, hoping it might hold some answers. Flipping through the pages, I stumbled upon frantic handwriting. Most of it was indecipherable, rushed scrawls about darkness and couldn't get out. But one line sent a chill down my spine: "She's not safe until she finds the key." My heart raced as I felt the key in my pocket. Was I meant to find something else? I had to keep searching. Racked by urgency, I moved to the next room, a dim, cluttered living area. Suddenly, I heard a low, guttural growl echoing from somewhere beyond the walls. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I hesitated. Was this the entity that the whispers had warned me about? Before I could decide, the growl deepened, and with it came a sudden crash from the hallway behind me. I spun around in time to see the shadow of something large moving into the room. It was too fast for me to make out details, just a dark form with no clear shape. I could feel its presence pressing against me, as if it was hungry for fear. I stumbled backward, my back hitting a bookcase. The impact sent dust flying into the air, mingling with my breath. I had to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Then I remembered the notebook. Find the key. I gripped my key tighter, realizing I might need to unlock something more than just doors. I needed a way to confront whatever threat was lurking here. Taking a deep breath, I called out, "I'm not afraid of you." My voice trembled, revealing my fear, but I steeled myself. I wouldn't let it overtake me. The growl intensified, vibrating through the floor. "You should be," it seemed to whisper back, menacingly. That was when I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a faint glow emanating from a doorway at the end of the room, past the dark entity. With renewed determination, I took a cautious step toward it. As I approached, the shadows surged forward, trying to block my path. But I couldn't go back. I had to see what lay beyond that light, even if it meant facing the unknown. Just as I reached the threshold, everything went dark. I stumbled forward, my heart racing in the pitch darkness. The cold air rushed past me, and I instinctively reached out, feeling for the walls. I found nothing but empty space, as if the room had vanished entirely. Panic surged, but I forced myself to slow down and breathe. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared, illuminating a narrow path ahead. I followed it, each step feeling heavier, as if the shadows were clinging to my legs. The whispers from before returned, swirling around me. "Help us! Help us!" Their urgency seeped into my mind, drowning out my thoughts. Then, I heard it. A soft tinkling sound, like keys being jangled together. It was coming from somewhere deep within the dark. I hesitated. Did I dare follow? What if it was a trap? But that glimmering light was beckoning me. "Just keep moving," I whispered to myself. Eventually, the corridor opened into a larger space. The light grew brighter until it revealed a small alcove filled with objects, old trinkets, broken toys, and keys. Dozens of them hung from hooks, each one unique and ancient. My pulse quickened. This could be what I needed, more keys to uncover more doors. As I stepped closer, I noticed something strange about the keys. They shimmered, each reflecting a pattern of swirling colors, pulsating like a heartbeat. One key caught my attention more than the others. It was smaller than the rest, glinting with an unusual brightness. I reached out, feeling an inexplicable pull toward it. But the moment my fingers brushed against the metal, the cacophony of whispers erupted. "No! Not that one!" The voices surged like a tidal wave, overwhelming me. I stumbled back, caught off guard. "Why?" I tried to shout, though my voice was swallowed by the growing darkness. Then I remembered the woman's eyes. They'd been filled with fear, a mirror of my own. "Where are you?" I called out, desperate for an answer. "What do I need to do?" As if in response, the dark mass I had encountered earlier stirred again, this time coalescing out of the shadows and taking form. It was human-shaped, but wrong, a twisted reflection of fear and despair. I felt the bile rise in my throat as its eyeless face turned toward me. "Find the one who can't leave," it rasped, its voice echoing around the room. "The key is not your salvation." I shivered at its words. "What does that mean?" I demanded, but it merely leaned closer, its breath cold against my skin. Before I could react, the world around us shifted. I was pulled back, thrown against the wall, the key clattering from my grasp. The light blinked out, drowning me in shadows once again. My mind raced. There was a connection between the key, the whispers, and the presence looming in the darkness. I had to find answers. But as I fumbled to stand, the whispers grew louder, merging into a single, haunting plea: "Help us. Help her." With newfound determination, I pushed forward into the dark once more. The voices pulled me in one direction, their urgency guiding me deeper into the unknown. I couldn't stop now. There was no turning back. That's when I heard a door creaking open just yards away. I had to get there first. I ran, the shadows chasing behind me, eager to reclaim me as their own. I reached the door just in time. It stood ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dark corridor. My heart raced as I pushed it open, barely able to comprehend what lay ahead. The moment I stepped through, the whispers intensified. They weren't just echoes anymore, they felt like they were brushing against my skin. Inside, the room was dimly lit. It smelled old, like damp earth and forgotten memories. Shadows darted along the walls as if they were alive. I hesitated, scanning the space, searching for any signs of the source of those pleas. And then, I saw her. A girl about my age sat huddled in a corner, knees drawn to her chest. Her hair tangled and her eyes wide, she looked like she belonged to this place, trapped somehow. A chill ran down my spine. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond. Instead, she stared beyond me, her face pale and fragile in the dim light. I felt something shift in the air, a thick sensation of dread that wrapped around me like a serpent. "You have to help us," she finally said, her voice shaky. "But you can't take anything from here, why?" I pressed, overwhelmed. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. "What happened to you?" Her gaze remained vacant, focusing on something I couldn't see. "The shadows are hungry," she replied, almost to herself. "They'll never let me go if you don't find the right key." A wave of nausea hit me. The key. I instinctively checked my pockets. I still had the other keys, those shimmering, beautiful keys. "What do you mean the right key?" I asked, trying to hold on to hope. "They'll trick you," she warned, her voice rising with urgency. "It's not about unlocking doors. It's about freeing me." Just then, a horrible sound erupted from the darkness behind me. It was a collision of hollow wails, like a symphony of anguish. I turned to see a thick shadow slithering toward us, coalescing into a massive form. The girl scrambled back as the shape loomed closer, an amalgamation of darkness and rage. "Run!" she cried. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted across the room, my heart pounding in my ears. The shadow followed, breath hot and rancid. I darted to the door I had just come through, but it slammed shut, trapping me inside. My desperation rose as I pounded against it. I could hear the whispering voices, now louder and more frantic than before. "Help her! Help us!" Then I noticed something on the floor, a trail leading from the girl to the shadow. It was a thin, shimmering thread, barely visible in the darkness. Somehow, it connected them both. I felt the urge to follow it, but my instinct screamed to escape. But as the shadows crawled closer, I knew I had to make a choice. I couldn't leave her behind. With a surge of courage, I reached out for the thread. It pulled me toward her, and just as the darkness engulfed me, I grasped it tightly. That's when everything froze. The room vibrated, and the girl's eyes locked onto mine, wide with fear and something else, hope. "Find the truth," she whispered, just before the world shattered around us. And then, darkness consumed me once more. I woke up, gasping for air and disoriented. The darkness around me was thick, and for a moment, I feared I was still trapped in that room. But then I realized I was lying on a cold, hard floor. My fingers brushed against something rough. I pushed myself up and blinked, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was in a different place. The room was small and cramped, filled with the remnants of dust and decay. A single narrow window was caked with grime, allowing only a slither of muted light to seep in. The walls were painted a peeling white, but it was hard to tell what color they once were. I was alone, but the air thrummed with an ominous energy. That's when I heard a soft tapping sound, irregular yet persistent. It echoed from somewhere nearby, a rhythm that felt agonizingly familiar. I stood up, my legs shaky, and focused on the noise, which grew louder as I neared a door at the far end of the room. I had to know what it was. With each step, dread filled my stomach. I reached for the handle and hesitated. What if it led back to the shadows? I took a breath, steeling myself, and opened it. The door creaked, revealing a narrow hallway barely illuminated by flickering overhead lights. The tapping had stopped. My heart raced, half expecting something to jump out at me. But the hallway was empty. I stepped into it cautiously, listening hard. I followed the hallway, my footsteps quiet against the old wooden floor. Every few feet, the lights above fizzled and buzzed, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Just as I thought I might be safe, a loud crash echoed somewhere in the distance, making me jump. Panic surged, urging me to move faster. I turned a corner and saw something, a flash of red. It was a door, swinging slightly, as if inviting me inside. What is going on? I muttered under my breath, but curiosity pulled me closer. I stepped into what appeared to be a small library. Dust-covered books lined the shelves, and the air smelled of musty paper. And there, in the middle of the room, was a table. Upon it lay an old key, shimmering just like the ones I had in my pocket. I approached it slowly. Is this the right key? I wondered aloud. My pulse quickened at the thought of freeing the girl. But something nagged at the back of my mind. What if taking the key sealed her fate instead? Before I could decide, the door slammed shut behind me, and I felt an icy rush of wind. The whispering voices returned, growing in a chaotic crescendo. The truth. Find the truth. They pleaded, overlapping in a disorienting clamor. Shut up. I shouted, half out of fear, half out of frustration. I clutched the old key tightly, its cool metal biting into my palm. I needed to find a way out. But did I really know where I was going? The flickering lights faded completely, leaving me in total darkness. The whispers intensified, circling around me, drowning out my thoughts. I was no longer sure if I should run or stay. In that moment of despair, I remembered the girl's face. The hope in her eyes. I couldn't let her down. Before I could second-guess myself, I flung the door open, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. Someone or something was watching me from the shadows. I slammed the door behind me, the echo reverberating through the room as I felt the air grow denser, suffocating under an unseen weight. The whispers thrummed in my ears, a desperate chorus pleading for release. Help us! They cried, blending together until each voice sounded like my own fear. Just ahead, a soft glow broke through the darkness, leading me toward an old window. Dust particles danced in the faint light spilling in. I squinted outside a world obscured by shadows and twisted shapes, but nonetheless, it hinted at life beyond this nightmare. I edged closer, gripping the key tightly. The rhythmic tapping resumed behind me, each thump resonating like a heartbeat. I turned back, feeling a primal instinct claw at me, urging me to evade whatever lay in the corners of the room. Shadows slinked along the walls, taking on forms that seemed almost human, yet distinctly not. They were alive, they were hungry. The door I had previously come through creaked open, revealing the massive figure of my neighbor. His wild eyes looked more frenzied than ever. You shouldn't be here. You need to leave. He shouted, desperation breaking his voice. Why? What's happening? I demanded, fear cutting through my panic. I can't leave without understanding. The key! He cried. It's not safe. It's not just a key, it's a beacon. His words resonated with a chilling clarity. I glanced back at the figure standing at the edge of the shadows. The girl's terrified face flickered into view, and the malevolent form lurking behind her pulsed with a dark hunger. But she needs help. I shouted back, torn between my growing dread and the urgency to save the girl I'd seen. Nothing can help her. Nothing can help any of us. The neighbor's voice was now tinged with despair. You need to leave before it feeds on you too. No. I couldn't abandon her. I could feel the connection vibrating in my chest, the key, the whispers, the shadows. It all became a vortex of desperation, driving me forward. I took a step toward the girl and started to plead, what do I need to do? What is it that can free you? The figure beside her began to shift, darkness flowing like liquid, its void-like presence evolving. I could see the shimmer of eyes within, eager and sadistic. It hungered for the chaos within me. Find the heart, the girl whispered, her voice barely audible above the low growl emanating from the figure. The key will reveal the truth. It's about her, she must be set free. I felt a surge of courage mixed with dread. What heart? I asked, looking frantically between the neighbor and the girl, hoping for clarity. But before a reply came, the shadows lunged forward, a black cyclone whirling around me. I felt my legs give way as darkness enveloped me. In that moment, all I could see were the swirling figures of lost souls, their faces twisted in despair. Then something snapped. Get out! I screamed, the words raw and spilling from some primal place within. The key trembled in my hand, and as I raised it, a blinding light shot forth from its core, flooding the room with brightness that chased away the darkness. The figures recoiled, their pained faces flickering like dying embers. The noise crescendoed into a chaotic roar as they merged into the shadows once again. I felt the air shift. In that brief moment, everything gained clarity. I lunged forward, slamming the key into the door with sudden force. It clicked open, and a rushing wind surged through. Instinctively, I turned back toward the girl, ready to pull her to safety. But there was no time. The darkness howled, raking through the room, desperate to reclaim what it was losing. Go! She screeched, eyes wide with fear urging me to escape. Please! It won't stop for long. With a final wave of hope, I dove through the door into the blinding light, hearing the cries of both the girl and the entity behind me. I stumbled forward into a new space, my apartment, bathed in morning sunlight. I gasped for breath, collapsing to the floor in a heap. I was out, but where was she? I looked around in frenzied disbelief, the weight bearing down on my heart. The silence in my apartment felt unnatural. In the sudden absence of the whispers, my hands trembled as I fished out the old key from my pocket. It lay there, heavy and ominous, glinting in the sunlight. I still think about that girl sometimes, about what I left behind. Did I do the right thing? Should I have stayed and faced that darkness alongside her? Some nights, I find myself searching my mind for answers, wondering if whatever trails insomnia left behind still linger in the shadows of my apartment. I moved shortly after, trying to escape the weight of those unanswered questions. Sometimes, in the darker hours, I hear distant knocks and whispers and wonder if they still echo through the walls. But mostly, I try not to think about it, about what might still be trapped on the other side of that door. Because that key, the one that opened my apartment but also stirred nightmares, remains heavy in my pocket, a reminder of what waits beyond the veil of light.